let's get right into it. Got some big news that broke yesterday. For a lot of people, bad news in a way, but at least the good news is we finally hired somebody. And I know Tyler and
Yeah.
I, we were going back and forth the past how many days with all the updates, good or bad. And regardless of who the hire is, it's nice that we can finally sort of move on from all of this. So, what's going on, Tyler? How's your Monday treating you?
It's good. We're actually recording here before 3:30, which is kind of crazy. We both got off at a good time today, so I'm pumped to do another episode. Like you said, I think for me and you, the question's been answered, man. This past, what is it? I don't know, since what is it, October it came out that Brian was, or late October, Brian was not going to return as OC. And ever since then, we've been wondering, like, man, who's this going to be? And yeah, it's been a crazy couple of, well, really crazy week, but really a crazy last couple days with just who they going to pick. It was down to Kevin Johns and Tim Lester, and they went with Tim Lester. So yeah, we'll dive into it. It's obviously maybe not the sexy hire or maybe the favorite pick amongst Iowa fans from what I've seen on Twitter, but we'll dive into it.
Yeah, and I think we can all sit here and agree that I think for Kirk, what he wanted was Paul Chris. And I think everybody wanted Paul Chris. And I think him turning down the job, which that's what I hear. I don't know if that's 100% accurate, but that's kind of what I've heard.
Yeah.
I think really kind of put a kind of damper into all of this. And it kind of made this whole process a lot worse than maybe what they were, or maybe Kirk was kind of anticipating from the get go. Because think about it, if like Paul Chris would have accepted the job, or I don't even know if there was a job offer on the table, but let's say Paul Chris was full on like I want to come to Iowa, made things right. This would have happened 2 weeks ago. All is good in the world, right? Well, he
Yeah.
doesn't. He kind of says I'm staying with Texas, and it's like okay, back to square one. And at that point, me and you, we were doing an episode. I don't even know what we were. Was this a Keenan Proctor episode? Maybe it was an episode before that. Maybe we were just doing an episode just to kind of give an update on the OC. And I said at the time, I said, Tyler, be prepared for a disappointing hire because we're to the point now where it's middle of January. It's almost end of January, and there's not many more OCs out there that Kirk is going to take. Now, there's some OCs out there that you could probably get, but Kirk's not going to. I mean, there's going to be specific guys that Kirk wants to kind of run his system. And I said from
Yeah.
the get go, I said, be prepared for a disappointing hire. Well, then this week comes around and there's some new names that kind of start circulating, one of which is Kevin Johns. And at the time, I'm going to be completely honest with you, like last Wednesday or Tuesday, I had no idea who this Kevin Johns was. Started doing
Yeah.
some research, started looking at kind of what he's done at 5 different programs since 2014, Indiana, Memphis, Texas Tech, Western Michigan, and Duke. And I was pretty damn impressed. I was like, wow, at least one of the years at all 5, he has brought an offense in the top 35, um, which is really, really good, right? We always say,
Yeah.
can we be just top half? And what I liked about all 5 programs that he was at, they were all similar to Iowa. Like they don't get high end recruits. And he's still doing this at some of those smaller programs. So I was like, oh my gosh, I'm all in on this guy. And I just think it's like such typical Kirk. And he probably didn't mean it this way, but it's just funny. Kevin Johns comes to Iowa City. There's a pic of him at the Courtyard Marriott across the street from Kinnick. The entire fan base is pumped up, super excited because it's like, okay, yes, we're not getting Paul Chris, and this is dragged on, but man, this Kevin Johns, the resume that he's
Yeah.
had, like this is awesome. We're getting this guy, and then bam, it's Tim Lester. So nothing, no disrespect to Tim Lester, and that's kind of where I kind of want to get into with Tim Lester. It's just what I'm trying to get at, kind of this first initial wave of this episode. It's just like it does kind of suck in a way because it's like you go from feeling really good about Kevin Johns and everyone's kind of thinking it's going to be Kevin Johns. And then it's Tim Lester. And I had a kind of a feeling. I was talking to you on Friday about all this, and I said, I just have a feeling that Kirk is not gonna hire Johns for whatever reason. And sure enough.
Yeah, I to back up a little bit too, Colin, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head where I think Kirk maybe put all of his eggs in one basket and was really expecting a guy like Paul Chris to accept a job. And when he didn't, it really sounded like, from everything that I've read and heard, that there was really no plan B at that point. Um, it was back to kind of square one, like you said. And I'm sure they had names, and these names specifically, Kevin Johns, Tim Lester in mind, but it wasn't like there was a clear number two, I think, at that point. And, it gets delayed, a couple more weeks. And then really, like you had mentioned last week, a guy like Kevin John's names popped up. And at first I agree. I'm like, who? Like, I've never heard of this guy. And you were actually getting me really excited because you were breaking down a bunch of different um stats and different things and of how he performed at as an OC at all the different stops that he had made, and he's been successful really everywhere he's gone. um and I was like, man, that's a great resume. That's a guy that has earned his right to probably be the next OC at Iowa. Sure enough, what is it, yesterday or the day before, Tim Lester's name pops up. And you said it there. You're like, I got a bad feeling because there's no like this should have been a done deal with Kevin Johns, and it wasn't. And this Tim Lester guy comes in, has a what sounds like he killed the interview with Kirk. Um, and now we know for sure he's
And
the next OC.
and I do want to say this before we kind of move on. Like Kirk obviously hasn't came out yet and talked about this whole process, and we don't know. What if Kevin Johns turned down the job? Like, what if,
Yep.
I mean, it could be a variety of different reasons. And, at the end of the day, Kirk is going to hire who he feels most confident and most comfortable with. He's not going to hire based on what the fans want, which sometimes is, as a fan, you wish, but he's not going to do that. And not many coaches will. They're going to hire who they think is the best fit. And for Iowa, and I've always said this with Iowa football program, it's almost kind of like a cult in a way. And I'm not saying that in a bad
Yeah.
way. And that so you have to find the right guy that fits into the culture and everything that kind of is what Iowa football is. I
Yeah.
think two things can be true about all this. Number one, it is kind of an underwhelming hire, especially when you waited 3 months for this.
Yeah.
But I do think after whole Paul Chris thing not happening, I just don't think at that point there was many more options out there. Because here's the thing: who wants to? What offensive coordinator wants to come to Iowa? Okay, offense has never been Kirk's mo. You win by defense. How many more years is Kirk going to be here? So, like, how many years would you even be in Iowa City? Because if a new coaching staff comes in, they might bring their own assistants, right?
Yeah.
Then there's also a short leash with fans because we have been so bad on offense that, like, for us, like, we are expecting, like, if we bring in a new OC, like, we're expecting better results, like, almost immediately. And, like, let's say it's still pretty bad, short leash. So it's like at the same point, underwhelming hire, but how many other options are there? And then number two, we have as Iowa fans to give this guy a chance at least. I mean, yes, 10 times out of 10, I would take Johns over him, but as Iowa fans, let's calm down a little bit. Let's see what happens, um, and give the guy a chance. And, if we're 4 or 5 games in, things are still pretty bad. Well, number one, you can maybe blame Kirk because it's like, okay, this is definitely like Kirk. And we'll get into some of that because of kind of what Lester kind of ran at Western Michigan. But um, let's give this guy a chance and just see what happens.
Yep, you're exactly right, Colin. And you kind of led into my next thing that I wanted to say was just, is Kirk going to let Tim Lester be Tim Lester? Or is he going to have his hand in everything that he does as an offensive coordinator, as a play caller? That only time will tell, right? We'll know within the first week. Maybe not the first week, but we'll know within the first couple weeks if Tim Lester has really kind of revamped this offense, because we need to have some semblance of a passing game. Number one, in my opinion, we do not know how to throw the ball right now at Iowa. And number two, we have to get back to, being able to consistently run the football a little bit more effectively. And what, you mentioned it. We'll talk about kind of the different stuff that he liked to run, or he ran back at Western Michigan. And hopefully that translates and that comes here to Iowa, because that's what he was successful doing. So, if everything looks similar and we still are going to be awful on offense, then yeah, you're right. It didn't matter if Kevin Johns or Tim Lester came. It's, at that point, there's nothing any offensive coordinator can do to save this offense if Kirk's really the guy behind it all. We'll know sooner rather than later.
And I've been seeing that a lot this last day. I've been just seeing that, and even people I've talked to, they all say the same thing. It's like, does it really matter who the next OC is? And my hope is like, well, I hope Kirk can wake up a little bit. I hope Kirk is, and we don't know the interview process, like what he tells these guys when they're interviewing,
Right.
like, hey, by the way, this is how we're gonna do it. And I really hope he lets whoever, obviously we know Loud Lester, but when he was interviewing all these guys, like my hope is that he, says like, hey, we want to make things better, and we're gonna take your ideas and we're gonna take what you want to do. So let's get into Lester's kind of pros and cons of this hire. So I'm going to start with the pros first. So I think one of the pros is when you look at Western Michigan. So he was a head coach at Western Michigan. If obviously everyone knows that by now, 2017 to 2022, he got fired. I will say with Western Michigan, he was coming in after PJ Fleck. Kind of tough to do because PJ Fleck, I mean, that was some really good years at Western Michigan when PJ Fleck was there, and then he leaves and kind of goes back to being kind of Western Michigan. It's a tough place to win at. If you think about it, in the state of Michigan, you have so many teams. You have Central Michigan, Eastern Michigan, Michigan State. It's very tough to win at. But he's head coach there, and he actually calls most of the plays. We don't know really how much he actually called the plays, but from what I've heard is he did call plays decent amount. And a few of those years, the offense for them was not bad. 2018, they were 39th and 35th in total in scoring offense. 2019, they were 25th and 30th. 2020, 16th and 9. 2021, 12th and 34. So that's not bad at all. That's like top 40 offense. And I get it, the MAC defenses aren't good, but if you're a decent offense, you should be doing that against bad defenses. Hell, Iowa can't even do that against bad defenses, right?
Correct.
So it's not all doom and gloom. Like everybody on Twitter, I've been seeing there's a couple people that have been tweeting like his stats in like 2022 and then at Syracuse. And it's like, okay, you leave out, or you just take into account his worst years, you leave out some of his better years. And that's not really, that's not really fair to do.
Not fair. No.
So he had some good years. If you just look at 2022, which he actually lost a lot of guys after 2021 season. And then you look at Syracuse, which, Syracuse, let's be honest, at that point in time, I know they're a little bit better of a program now. That was a sad program. And it still kind of is a sad program if you really think about it. So it's not really all his fault that they were not good those 2 years that he was there. Maybe you can pin it a little bit on him, but another thing I like, this is probably my number one pro, is I love how he loves to run the RPO, run pass option. I think that's something Iowa should have been doing the last how many years. I love that he likes to run out of a pistol, shotgun a lot. He's more of a vertical passing. If you go back and you watch some of the highlights when he was at Western Michigan, a lot of vertical passing. And this kind of goes into what we were just talking about. We'll know if Kirk really has full control on the offense, because if you don't see any of this stuff, it's Kirk's way or the highway. Because if you go back and you watch some of Western Michigan, this is literally all they ran. They ran RPO, pistol, shotgun, vertical passing. That was like pretty much their offense.
Yep.
So those things don't happen at Iowa come next year, then it's like, it's Kirk's way or the highway on everything. My second biggest pro with him is he was a quarterback back in the day, and he's coached quarterbacks. And what have we been saying from day one? We need to get an actual quarterbacks coach that's played that position, that knows what the hell they are doing. So I like that. He's also a pretty good recruiter from what I've heard. That's something Brian Ferentz was not. And
Yeah.
I think just being on the Packers staff this last year, I mean, you can't really say that's a negative. He's good friends. He's teammate, or he was former teammates with Matt LaFleur. I think obviously Matt LaFleur is a pretty dang good coach. You saw a Packers team that shouldn't even make the playoffs, make the playoffs. So
Right.
just 1 year in that organization, he probably learned a lot. So I mean, that's always a pro. And then the cons for me is there's not enough like concrete evidence that he's like a good play caller, right? Like because besides Western Michigan, he was only OC one other time at Syracuse, and in those 2 years, Syracuse was awful. So there's
Yeah.
not like with Kevin Johns, there was like evidence after evidence. He was at
Like
Indiana, then he was at yeah.
yeah, 5 different. Yeah.
So that's where I'm a little concerned by.
Yeah.
And if you really think about it, it's only been Western Michigan. Like it's not like I
Right.
wish maybe if he would have done this at like maybe a Power Five school, it would be a little bit better. Um, and then another con is just like this hire won't help. And I don't know if this is really a big thing or not, but it just won't help selling the fan base to be like excited for next year. I feel like it's just going to be so negative
Yeah.
until we get to that first game. And I just hate that because it just creates just with for the program. And I know like, I'm sure players and they don't give a crap what anybody says, but it just sucks when there's just negativity after negativity after negativity. And I just think like trying to sell the fan base and
Right.
obviously for us, we live in a day and age with NIL. Like I'm sure there's people probably like, I'm done, supporting them and all this. And I hate that. I don't like that. So you could maybe use that as like a con with this hire as well.
Yeah, the pro is he's kind of, I mean, he's done it previously, right? He like you mentioned, he was a former quarterback. He, you know, supposedly called a decent amount of plays. He's been an offensive coordinator. Right there is, to me, a resume deserving of being the next OC at Iowa.
Yeah.
Brian was handed this job with literally no experience calling plays. So to me, that's already a step in the right direction. Um, and like you said, I mean, he's been around the block. He's been in college and NFL, so lots of experience, I think, with different organizations, different guys. And like you said, he probably learned a lot being with the Packers last year. And that to me, that's valuable right there. Um, and then yeah, the cons, obviously, it's just not a sexy hire. It's not something that is gonna wow anybody. Maybe even the players. I don't know. They probably never admit that, but um, like you said, just kind of building that excitement, getting that buzz back in Iowa City. That this hire doesn't really do that, at least for me, and obviously a lot of fans on Twitter feel the same about that. But um, like you mentioned, man, you got to give the guy a shot. You know, you got to just see what happens, and that's the thing. Obviously, hopefully this year too, we stay a lot more healthy, which I think will help Tim Lester quite a bit more than it ever did
Yep.
Brian last year. um and
Better O
that's still a
line
huge
with
better O
Proctor.
line.
Like
Exactly.
I thought about today. I kind of forgot
Yeah.
about like Proctor in this whole situation. Like, God, oh yeah, I forgot that we got like the second best transfer in the
Right. Right. And that
portal.
only helps your run and pass game right there. That's a huge
Yep.
piece that I think sometimes, yeah, even I forget about too. So just a wait and see. Like I said, there's pros and there's cons. To me, there's more pros with a guy like this that I've never even seen personally compared to a guy like Brian Ferentz, where he's just gotten progressively worse and worse.
Exactly. I'm glad
So
you put that up because it's like people need to realize
yeah.
it's better than what we've had. And once again, like you use the word like it's not a sexy hire. We all have to admit, like Kirk was never going to hire
No.
and so like
The
that's
only
why it's like
sexy hire, quote unquote, was Paul Christ. And if we take a step back, I still feel like that's a long shot, right? Like, I don't know.
no, I agree. I mean, I was confident with him, but at the same time, I was like, it's almost too good to be true, kind of a
Right.
situation.
Right. He's already
Um,
at Texas. He's already probably got a good gig, and like he's waiting for just a better offensive coordinator
well,
opportunity.
I think he wants to be a head coach again, and I
Well,
think
that's
so.
probably
That's
true.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think for this, I'm not gonna lie to you. Like Friday, Saturday, I was so mad
I was
that like
too.
Tim
I'll
Lester
be
was even
transparent.
was
I'll be
even
true. Yeah.
like considered. It's like give Kevin
Yep.
Johns the hire now. And once
Yep.
again, I would still take Johns over him, but maybe that's just me kind of talking myself into this a little bit more, but I don't think it's like a horrible hire. I really don't, especially, and I'm saying this, if Kirk lets him kind of do his thing, because
Yes.
I really like in people. I encourage people to go like watch some of his highlights back. Like I really like the
Yes.
RPO style. He loves doing it, and he loves doing it with tight ends. And you think about like Luke Lachey and Addison Ostrango. Like we got the tight ends to do a lot of that stuff. He loves to throw the ball
Yep.
vertically. He loves the pistol formation. I've been saying that. I mean, how many times have you heard that from me saying like, God, I wish we ran out of the pistol. I wish we ran out of the pistol. And we
Yeah.
got the running backs to do the RPO. Like we
Yep.
got hopefully the offensive line to block. Like I don't think it's a bad hire as long as like Kirk lets him do his thing. And once again, I love that he was a former quarterback. And once again, he's a good recruiter. And he's actually
Yep.
brought at Western Michigan, once again, it's a tough place to win at, a tough place to recruit. He's brought some guys to the NFL from Western Michigan. One
Yeah.
being Sky Moore that plays for the Chiefs. So like as a wide receiver, so like he has some. I just feel like a lot of Iowa fans just immediately like they're just thinking all cons, and I encourage people to take a deep breath.
Yeah.
Yes, trust me. I wish it was maybe someone different, but let's give this guy a chance. I even saw some Iowa fans like tweeting at him, like at his like pro like, and it's like really
Yeah.
like we're really gonna do that. Let's welcome him. Let's welcome him in
Yeah.
and just see what happens. My gosh.
Yeah.
So I don't know. We'll just it is what it is for me. Like if we're, I would give this like a letter grade. Like I don't know. Like I'm not like
I
B
go
minus
like
C plus. Like
that's C
you
plus
know,
B. Yep. Yep.
I
Right
think
around there.
everybody else would probably give it like a D, and it's like I don't know. I hope people after they listen to this maybe start. You know, my hope is, and I'm not trying to sell you on this guy. I'm not. That's not what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
But at least just be maybe a little bit more positive about
Right.
hopefully things change, right? And we'll know. We'll know. I mean, come
Yeah.
spring practice, come fall camp, we'll kind of start seeing, we'll start hearing some stuff. And I'm sure that's the thing. I feel like every year, even with Brian Ferentz, you'd always have the players be like, oh yeah, it's different. It's different. And it never changes. So it might take
No.
until the first game to really know. But I'm just saying if Kirk lets him do his thing with the RPO and the pistol and the shotgun, like I'm not gonna lie, I'm kind of excited. So
And we could still incorporate what we have been doing that's been successful. But
yep.
obviously, a lot of it to me, we have to have a passing game. This is 2024 in college
Yeah.
football. You
It's
cannot tell me that what we've been doing is even like real life. Like it's not even real life to me. Like the stats of us trying to throw the football, it's ridiculous. And Kirk, please, for the love of God, just let him do his thing. Don't meddle with the offense too much, please. I know you're going to have your say in there somewhere. I get that. I'm a
yep.
realistic fan. I understand you're going to be in there somewhere. But let's let him do his thing. Cuz that's the only way he's going to be successful. Otherwise, why did we fire Brian? If it's going to be the same thing, we might as well kept Brian.
Well, and
Right?
I really believe Kirk would have kept Brian if it wasn't for Beth.
Oh, exactly.
Um,
Exactly. So that's what makes me a little nervous that is things really going to change and yeah, I don't believe anything until I see week 1. That's all I'm going to say about that.
and I know we're running out of time here, but I just real quick too, because I was about ready to forget about this, but we still got to kind of hire one more position coach. And from the sounds of it, now I don't know if this is
Oh
true or
boy.
not, but it
Oh
sounds like
boy.
Boudmeyer, with the guy that we have been saying, like, oh God, not him. Sounds like he might be a position coach coming up here. And I don't know. I mean, I would imagine Tim Lester will be the OC / quarterbacks. Makes sense. He was a former quarterback. He's coached that position before.
Yeah.
But then that leaves the wide receivers, and that's I've heard Boudmeyer. And to me, it makes like okay, if people are gonna be mad about the OC, I would suggest be more mad about Boudmeyer potentially being the wide receivers coach, because you talk about a guy that number one has never coached that position, never played that position before, and then number two, like once again, you should be fired on the spot for suggesting bringing in Deacon Hill. You should be fired right then and there. Like you're done.
I was gonna say
You're
he had
canned.
a lot to do with that. Yeah.
Yes, he was the one that suggested. He was the one that like told them like, let's bring in Deacon Hill. Uh, it makes zero sense. Once again, what is something that we have been lacking? The passing game.
Yes.
Getting really good wide receivers to come to Iowa. Go out and find a stud wide receivers coach. Pay him top dollar and have him come to Iowa. And once again, I don't know if this is true or not. So this might all be not worth even talking about. But if it happens, like once again, be more mad about that because that is complete BS if that does happen. And I'm sure it probably will happen.
And that would be a huge downgrade from Kelton Copeland. And he didn't even, obviously do that good as a wide receivers coach.
No.
I never really saw our wide receivers develop over the course of their time there, at least the last couple of years. So yeah, I that makes me extremely nervous. That's a good point. If that's true, oh boy.
Hope not. But
If
they haven't
that's
even
true, then that almost makes me think, and I'm just gonna be quick about this. If that's true, that almost makes me think like this, like Tim Lester hire is like just the next Bryant. Like like Kirk's just gonna still do everything the same. Because like what we're clearly not trying to get better with the wide receivers. Then does that mean that we're not trying to be better at play calling either? Like
yeah, I'm a little nervous about that as well. Trust me, I was kind of pumped when they kind of finally let go of Copeland because you're like, okay, maybe.
Yeah.
But then I'm like, okay, well, if you just bring in Budmeyer, who's been already on the staff, who's never been a wide receiver, never coached that, it just makes zero sense. But they haven't really officially announced even Lester as OC. And so like I don't know how that's all going to play out. Like I said, with the position coaches, and so forth. But
I'm curious to hear what Kirk has to say about it all from his mouth. Right?
Yeah, I am too. Just kind of see how the process went.
Yep.
Why he decided on Lester over Johns, because I'm sure that will be asked. Because once again, it was known that Johns was in Iowa City. He had countless. He had dinner. He had that. He was at the Courtyard Marriott. So people knew he was in. So yeah, for a fact, like guys like David Eichel, someone's gonna ask Kirk like, why not? Or and I could see one of the reporters like bringing up some of Johns' like resume and being like, why did you choose Lester? And I'm curious to hear what Kirk has to say.
Somebody will ask a tough question for him and he's probably not going to love it, but that's what you got to do when you make a hire like this. So,
yep, for sure. Well, we will end it there. We're running out of time. We're off season, so we don't pay for the really big subscription of being able to go above 40 minutes because usually in the off season, there's not much to talk about. So besides OC stuff. So we will be back probably in the next couple of weeks. I'm sure there'll be more kind of news that comes out with Lester. And obviously by then, maybe, position coach will be hired for wide receivers or whatever. I'm sure there'll be some topics to talk about. So we'll be back on the air probably sometime maybe next week or something like that. So until then, have a good rest of your week and go Hawks.